Right, so I thought it would be kind of fun to just show you from a songwriting perspective. I'm going to be doing a demo on a product coming up. By the time you see this, it'll be out. But how I come up with ideas for writing. And regardless of how silly they are or, you know, how intellectual they are, that sort of thing. But basically, this thing that I'm coming up with, it's a demo for a guitar plugin. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just looking at writing something that kind of showcases the product. Now, the first thing I always think about is, you know, things like, how do I want to be tuned? How do I want the guitar tuned? You know, do I want it to be a heavier thing or a more mellow thing or whatever it is I'd like to do? And this just goes with songwriting in general. So basically what happened was I was practicing another band that I play with. I was using this guitar, and this guitar is actually tuned a half step down, and then the sixth string is tuned a whole step down from there. So we call that drop C sharp. So when I play, that's what I'm tuned to. Now, what I did was I was trying to think of something to do. Now, let me change my tone just for a second here. Let me fix this so you can hear this. Okay, so now... Right, like that. Okay, so what I decided I wanted to do is instead of going kind of a real heavy way with this tuning, which oftentimes I will do and try and come up with something, you know, something like that where it's much darker and heavier. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to go with a different direction with this plugin and with my playing, just because I think most people will probably go the other direction and do something really heavy. So this is why you're hearing this tone. It's not a real massively distorted tone. I was just trying to dial something in where I could get some palm muting and that sort of thing, but it wasn't like chugga, right? So again, this is a perfect place to start trying to write something. Sometimes you're influenced by your tuning. Sometimes you're influenced by the tone that you're using. You know, you dial in something and you go, hey, that's pretty cool, and you start writing. So what I was doing with this was I was trying to think of something that would be a little more basic in nature, and then I would just kind of elevate it a little bit, as guitar players tend to do. And so what I just wanted something that was going from this to that, more or less. Just something real straightforward like that. So what I did was I started coming up with an idea where instead of just playing the chords like that, I started writing this little thing that was like... Okay, so what I was doing here is I was playing, now again, just hypothetically think of this as an A power chord, right? Instead of calling it something else because we're tuned differently, just so we can understand each other. So I'm thinking of this as like an A power chord with the drop tuning on top here. Okay? Okay, so that's what I started coming up with, was just this riff, again, just screwing around on the guitar, trying to think. You know, I could do something like that, but that really puts it in major because don't talk anymore. I'm trying to think what song that is. It kind of reminds me of from like the 70s. Isn't it funny? Right? So I didn't want that happy quite that much. So what I did was I came up here. So all I'm doing there is playing this A power chord and then dropping those. But of course, to go from 12 to 11 to 9, I'm, you know, trying to finger it like that's going to be kind of tough. So I use my pinky here. And then you'll notice what I start doing then is using all three of these fingers. And again, you could do this any way you want. I'm just trying to show you the creative process. So I'm doing this. But because I feel the need, whether I do or don't, the second time around, what I do is I change up the rhythm of that. Now, I'm trying to keep it pretty much in 4/4 time. Instead of purposely trying to make everything really complex, I'm keeping it fairly straightforward. So the only thing I did was I just changed my timing on that second run that comes back up. You see? And then we've got that chord coming in, right? So I need to think about something I'd like to do there. So what I did was I kept with this A chord, but I added that note in the octave up on top. And then trying to straighten this one out, since the other one was longer, I'm trying to make this one a little bit shorter, just so they contrast a little bit. So as I play, so I tried all kinds of things like that, and I ultimately just kind of settled on, as of today. It might change tomorrow or this afternoon, but so just something kind of like that, because again, it was different than the other one, and it still got sort of a rhythmic hook to it. And then I ended it, I added in this, and this is what I want to talk about with this. I'm just doing an octave, slide here from right there. So when I play, now I'm thinking about this from a realistic perspective of actually playing this. Sometimes as guitar players, we will write things and then we can't perform them, right? Not that you're going to perform it, but for me, that's always kind of a staple in my brain that I think about, is I want to make sure that if I needed to perform it, I could. So I'm thinking about the fact I'm coming from, and I got to get back into that. So with a little bit of practice, I can line that up. You see, I know I could get that with some practice, so I'm cool with that. So now my riff becomes, right? So now this is what I did. I'm going to switch over here so you can see this. Okay? So we're just going to two, 1, 2, check, check, check. Sorry. I soloed that up so you wouldn't hear me. So switching back and forth, it takes my voice out when I switch to the other screen. So anyway, if that makes sense, all I did was I just decided on a drum beat that worked pretty well with what I was trying to do there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now include the guitar part. So if I did something like this, give me just 1 second here, because I want to make sure I can turn all these on at the same time. So that way you can hear me. And we'll go there too, and we'll go there too. So it looks like you can hear me. Let me switch over and see if you can still hear me. Check, 1, 2, check, check, check. Yep, so you can still hear me now. So that'll work. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I recorded that part together. Okay, so we've got that part now. Now what I did was I just went back, just to make it sound a little cooler and give me more perspective on what I'm doing, I added in another part. So I took this part that I recorded, I moved it to the left, and then I re-recorded the exact same part again with another guitar part. So it would sound more like this now. Okay, so let me come back to me now. All right, so that's what I've got so far, and it sounds pretty good. Again, one of the magic things about recording is when you pan them. If you record the exact same part again. Now, what I did was when I recorded the second part, I used the same software that I'm demoing, the same plugin that I'm demoing. I just chose a little bit different tone, which makes a really big difference because not only is physically playing the guitar part, twice or whatever you might do, very important, not just copying and pasting and then panning it because it's not going to feel right. You physically have to play it again. But when I use a different guitar tone, it actually separates even more. So you get a real authentic tone to that. So it just sounds really cool. So that's what I did with that. And then what I decided was, okay, so I've recorded this part. What do I do next? Okay, because what I want to do is I also want to showcase a kind of a solo tone as well. So what I did, let me switch back over here so you can see this, okay? And you can still hear me, so that's working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with a part, because I don't want to solo over this thing. I thought this sounded cool. I don't want to solo over that. So what I did was I came up with this part right here. And I just do that twice, okay? And what I'm doing there is I'm playing this. Now it's only coming out of one speaker here. Let me solo up both these so you can. So now you're hearing both parts at the same time here. Where normally I would record those separately, but that way it sounds good in your headphones or whatever you're listening to. So I'm still using those sounds, but what I'm doing is I'm playing 0, 6, 9, and I'm just adding this, and then I go to 7th fret here. Again, just changing up the sound of that, and then okay, and I'm just setting myself up so I can solo. So I'm just creating a little bit of a bed in the background, and that's all that is. You see? And so that way, what I can do is do a solo. Now, let me go back to this software here, solo this up. So the next thing I did was added this solo. Now, I don't have a solo yet, okay? But what I'm doing is I'm deciding on a tone for the solo that's different than the other tones. Because again, remember, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to demo this plugin, okay? So I want to use a bunch of the stuff that this has to offer. So those two guitar tones left and right that you just heard, those are two different amps inside this plugin. So now for the solo, I'm doing a third amp, okay? So this one would have a little bit different tone as well. I don't know what my solo is going to be yet. I haven't decided on that, if I'm just going to improvise or if I want to write something. But of course, I've decided on the scale that's going to work best, all that kind of stuff. I've already figured that out. Okay, and so what I did was to try and kind of either A, wrap this up, or to give it a third segment. What I did was I added this thing at the end. Okay, now with the drums, I don't know that I like these drums, but this is what I have for now. You know, where I might decide to go halftime on those, because this part was kind of there. This part was kind of there. So at that point, what I might decide to do is put a halftime drum thing in there. So I haven't decided that yet, but I just want to show you how this process works when you're writing. You know, you start with a melody, or you start with a riff idea or a chord progression or whatever it is that you like. And certainly, for me, the tuning of the guitar has an impact as well, because when I write in drop tuning, whether it's half step or just drop tuning, just tuning that sixth string down a whole step from wherever it is, when I write in that, I write differently than I would if I was just in standard tuning or half step tuning or something like that. My brain thinks differently. And so what comes out is different. So when I'm trying to be more creative, oftentimes I like to be in a tuning like this. So, and then, like I said, I just made a conscious decision to not make it super heavy, but to make it a bit more musical in this tuning. And so hopefully that helps you a little bit in understanding part of the writing process, and certainly how to record and come up with some ideas as well. Hey, I'd like to give you a free pass to my best courses that will take your playing to the next level fast. Just go to guitarzoom.com and get started for free. And there's also a link in the description. Thanks.